You are now tuned in to Coffee Between Two Immigrants, a show that dives deep into the stories of immigrants that come to this country and have so much to offer, as well as accomplished so much. From business owners to politicians to some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. Let's dive in.
Okay, Marie, thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. You are the first person to be interviewed on Between Two Immigrants. So I'm honored to have you, not just because of your background and everything you've been through, but you're a friend of the family. And I've known you ever since I come to Canada. And so we go back a long ways, and you're very close with my wife's family too.
And your father-in-law were at the same Camp Miriam together.
Okay, so you and Kenny.
He's Kenny to me, he's not Ken.
Yeah, Kenny. I know. He's not Kenny to a lot of people, but he is to the close friend.
And plus, we're on the same board together. He got me on the board for him.
Abonim.
The Jewish Senior Alliance.
Oh, the Jewish Seniors Alliance. Okay. But you went to Camp Miriam together.
Yeah, I was a counselor.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, you're a couple years older than him, right?
A few years.
Yeah.
he just had an 88th birthday last week.
He did.
Yesterday, the day before.
It was yesterday. Yesterday was his birthday. Yeah.
It was 88.
Yeah, we're going to celebrate it tomorrow at the BI. So, yeah. There's just so much to talk about, and I don't even know where to start, but I think what I'd like to do is just start out with where you're from and a little bit about where you're from. And what we'll do is we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about what happened to you and what spurred you on as a child to move to Canada. Of course, it's a very different story than almost anyone I'm going to interview. And I'd really like you to share with our listeners, because I think not everybody understands the whole story and knows what happened. And so it's going to be a very fun, I don't know fun, but an interesting journey to follow through. And so maybe you tell me a little about how it all began.
First of all, I want to thank you for being your first person on podcast.
Thank you.
I'm honored to be your first client.
My first guest.
And guest. My story started in 1939. I was 4 years old when the war came to my country of birth, Brussels, Belgium. Of course, as a 4-year-old, you don't understand what's going on, but you feel the fear that goes around you. Mm-hmm. My mother was a widow. I didn't know my father. He died when I was 3 years old, but my father was traveling around at that time. And so I don't remember him being home and things like that. I am the youngest of 11. I found 8 of my brothers and sisters after the war, which was unusual from 11 children.
Right.
I've lost all the rest of my family. I don't know my grandparents. My mother, my brother Jean, and my brother Albert all were murdered.
In the Holocaust?
In the Holocaust. Auschwitz. I went into hiding after my brother Jean came home, and I tell this story of my first recollection of fear. I never had fear. A 4-year-old doesn't have fears. Doesn't really, and I might as well say, you don't know your religion at that age as well. So for me, when they ask if I'm Jewish, I am Jewish. I am a very proud Jewish woman and involved in all Jewish and non-Jewish aspect of life here. But my brother Jean came home, and as I said, my mother was a widow. In my country of birth, children never raised their voices to their parents. So I never heard yelling. But my brother Jean yelled at my mother. That made me scared. Because I didn't understand. There was never any yelling. I never heard yelling. And of course, I didn't understand what was going on. I can tell you what it is now. My mother made a mistake of listening to the radio, the propaganda. And that said, all Jews had to report to the police station their families, parents, grandparents, cousins, aunts, and where they lived. And as I said, as my mother was a widow and had 6 children at home, the other 3 were already married. And so the police station turns out not to be the city police. It was the Gestapo.
Oh, wow.
But all Jews had listened. So by her reporting our family, she destined us to die. Wow. My brother Jean was in the French resistance. I was very lucky. My sister Sarah, I was working at the police station. My sister Sarah died 6 years ago at the age of 96. Survived 6 concentration camps. And she reported to Jean, because my sister Sarah was also in the French resistance at that time. And my brother Jean yelled at my mother saying, "What did you do?" And so we would have to go into hiding. But my next memory I have, and if you read my book, A Childhood Unspoken, I speak about this. I found myself walking down a dirt road in the country. My mother, my brother Jacques, my sister Esther, brother Henri, and I. And see thousands of people all over walking towards us, and we're walking. My brother Henri, who is older than me, of course, I sat on his shoulder, and memory of the first plane I ever saw was walking down that road. I looked up in the sky and I saw the silver bird. I was very excited, and sitting on my brother Henri's shoulder, I banged on his head and I said, "Hey, Dad, look, he doesn't pay attention to me." And I saw beautiful stars coming out. This bird, I thought, but those stars were guns shooting down at us.
Wow.
So when I said to my brother Henri, because I got so excited to see all those stars, never seen that kind of stars coming from a bird, I banged on his head again and I said, "Tu dois voir," to look. The next thing I know, we're flying in the ditch. He's pushing my mother, Esther, Jack, and I into the ditch. That was my first encounter, I would say around 4.5 years old, with death and blood. There's lots of stories like this of survival. I had miracles in my life of survival. My brother, the next time I saw my brother Jean, he said for me to go into the bedroom and put on clothes that Maman had left on the bed. And because I couldn't pack a suitcase, the neighbors would see that we were trying to escape.
Right.
And in those days, I was worth probably a slice of bread to a person that's starving. Because in our country, we're starving already.
If they turned you in, you say.
Say we turn us in, which was the children in those days turned in their parents because it was so hungry. Things happen in a war that you don't really think as a free person, things you would do. But humans we either are good or we're bad. We are taught religion and we are taught hate. Taught how to behave or not to behave. And Hitler used that in the youth army. They were the worst army. They did a lot of killing on the street with their rifle and the knife at the end, the bayonet. Saw a lot of atrocities in our lives that a child should not. When I came to this country, we were told we were damaged goods, that we wouldn't amount to anything. We would live off the government. I would die by the age of 30. There is a book written, None is Too Many, because Canada, we had a bad time in our history of Canadian history. We had Prime Minister Mackenzie King.
He said that on the Parliament floor, didn't he? That none was too many when it was talking about the immigration of Jewish people after World War II.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I use that all the time in my teaching. It is a dark time of a history, not Canadian history.
Before we get to Canada, I want to know a little bit more about, you were in hiding at the time and a very young girl. What happened? But I know that you ended up you were in hiding for 5 years. Wow. In 1945, they caught you.
No, 1945, that was the end of the war.
Oh, okay. So
it was on my birthday, May the 10th. On May the 8th in Brussels, the people that were in hiding all the years listened to propaganda, and we all came out and said the war was over, and it wasn't. That's when I was caught.
Oh, okay.
But I did hide with non-Jewish people. I lived in a convent. I behaved like a Catholic child. I wore a Catholic uniform. I learned to speak Latin because that's the language that you speak in Brussels. Speaking of languages, I spoke 4 languages by the time I was 4 years old. Languages is something that saved my life throughout the war. Also, writing my book, we found out that I was used in the French underground because I have a gift that God gave me. I have a photographic memory.
Oh.
And the French underground used a lot of children, not just Jewish children, but unbeknownst to me, I was a messenger. I spoke, and so I was moved to many countries. And Germany, like Holland, and I spoke Dutch, I spoke German, I spoke Russian, I spoke Flemish, as I said, in Yiddish, and of course, learning more languages here in Canada.
Wow, that's interesting. So they would move you around. You didn't know
Because
you were being
every time
used,
it was
but
that I created to fit in this country with
right.
and speak English, but the child yet that survived, we all survived, we're comfortable, we're a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
For us to see our IDF soldiers dying, us, child survivor, and I think any Jew around the world, it's
was
like
horrific.
losing our own
It
child.
was horrific having so many people die. People who just wanted death to everyone that they could give. I know it really affected all of us. I can't imagine how it would affect the survivors of World War II. But
We are suffering again,
yeah,
and
yeah.
to have to. We are suffering again,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to have to. With COVID, and then October 7th to relive again,
Mm-hmm.
and to see the rise of anti-Semitism in our country,
Mm-hmm.
a free country.
Mm-hmm.
See it? It's always been dormant all over the world. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
But we survivors fought this with the government of teaching Holocaust in school. It took us 40 years to get grade 11 and grade 6 in Canada teaching on Holocaust. We're fighting now, or the school board is fighting in grade 10 to bring Holocaust education. We've been trying to warn all the years that it's there. You have to watch.
Mm-hmm.
But this hate is completely different than the Second World War. Because today, what we have been telling people, it's not just Jews. They're using us as a scapegoat, but it's all people in the world. They have been telling you for 30 years that they're taking over the world, not just Jews. It's just that we are the stepping stone of hate.
Yeah, we're one of the first groups that they pick on, but they moved to many other groups too. We know that. A lot of people died in the World War II that weren't Jewish. So it was a horrific war.
They killed people that were disabled.
Yeah.
Mental health. It wasn't just us.
Yes.
But we're trying to teach this, that it's not just...
Where you speak, we're almost like the canary in the coal mine when you see them coming after the Jewish people, that there's going to be other groups after that. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. So tell me, when you were caught, so we'll slowly move.
Like 2 days before the end of the war. Like 2 days before the end of the war.
Okay, and who were you caught?
They were picking, because everyone came out on the street to celebrate.
Oh, okay.
That were in hiding.
And
the trucks were all around to pick us up.
And did they put you in jail, or did they just put you?
They took us in the trucks, and we were taken to train stations.
Okay.
And I was very lucky, as many stories I can tell, that I was the last one pushed on the cattle car, because at the last push, there was no place to sit on the train. So you were like sardines.
They were still sending
2
people.
days before, they were trying to eliminate us.
They were trying to send people to Auschwitz, and
that's right. I don't know how long I was on the train, clang, 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 but I was the last person on the train on my side of the cattle car. I was lucky there was slats of wood instead of all posts. I could breathe, because people died in that car.
Right in
And I am 10 years old then. But those 5 years, I have stories that could write many books on survival. But this soldier at the train stopped, the gate opened, clank, 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 and there was this Gestapo man in front of me, in front of all of us, really, but the train had stopped just in front of him. Black uniform, black hat, swastikas on his lapel, shiny boots, cord attached to his waist with a revolver in one hand and another cord, leather cord on his left hand with a baton, a stick. And then in German, he said, "What is my sister doing on this train?" I looked left, I looked right. I was the only child. All the others were adult. I immediately turned into German. If I hadn't lived and learned German, I wouldn't have been able to speak. And I just told a story like I went. With me, he's talking to, looking at me. And he took me off the train, put me on his motorcycle, took me outside of the town. I don't remember where it is because I never learned. Like my brother John says, no names, no city, no people, no map. But I learned to read a map because in those days you don't ask anyone for direction.
Yeah.
And you only answer when someone speaks to you, you only answer what they ask. And he dropped me off. Years later, he saved. I said, good.
Why?
Bad. Turns out this officer was a friend of my brother Joe. This officer was swastikas, Gestapo, who probably has killed hundreds of people, recognized me. He used to come to my house for Shabbat.
Wow.
Friday, he was my brother Jean's best friend at the university. And how he recognized me, because I must have been in my mother's arms in those days. I was a baby. And he saved my life. Why? But there's miracles throughout my life that way. To horrors, it's not something I want to remember and pass down as what has happened before, but only that it will happen again.
If we forget,
is all I am trying to say.
Yes.
It is not as your guest to speak about the past. No child, as I said in my book, I came to Canada in a child's body with an adult mind.
Wow.
As a 12-year-old.
What happened to the people in that train? Did they end up going to a concentration camp, or did the war end? So they probably didn't even end up at the concentration camp. Wow. Wow, what a story. How long did it take you? Or tell me just what happened to the people in that train? Did they end up going to a concentration camp, or did the war end? So they probably didn't even end up at the concentration camp. Wow. Wow, what a story. How long did it take you? Or tell me just how you ended up coming to Canada.
It wasn't a choice by me.
Okay.
After the war, I didn't come to Canada until November of 1947.
Okay.
I arrived in Vancouver as the youngest child survivor. 7 of us came to Vancouver on January the 3rd, 1948.
Okay.
After the war, my brother Jean had said, don't get sick, ever. But after the war, I became sick. It just seems a lot of survivors finally let down their guards. And because of lack of food, I was very small, very tiny, no vitamins, no calories, big cavities in my mouth. I didn't know what cavities was until I came to Canada. Until I was 23, I had my first cavity, and I thought it was a headache, which I never had. The publicity, again, we thought it was propaganda. There were posters all over Europe saying any Jewish child wanting to leave the country to go to City Hall and request a passport. And lo and behold, my brother Henri was there at the same time as me. We weren't together. But this was 1947. It took 2 years to be accepted.
Okay.
We went and we made Henri, because he was older, made a passport because he was doing the same thing. He was doing it for us. But unbeknown to me, I didn't think of Henri or Esther or Jacques. I just wanted to get out. 12-year-old child that's been on her own all the time. You don't ask permission. You don't ask. I never asked.
You're on your own for 7 years since then, right? 7 or 8 years.
So we got a passport, Henri and I, and Esther and Jacques. So we are 4 in one family that were accepted by Canada. But those 2 years from 1945 to 1947, they gave us a list of things that any country gave them, the Jewish Congress. That's who brought us here, the Jewish Congress. No cavity, no this, no that, no this, no sickness, no this. No, they checked us out. And it took 2 years to come to
Wow.
my passport. My first passport had the J on it, even after all.
And what country's passport was that?
That was a Belgian passport.
And they still put J on it.
And the J with Jack.
For Jewish.
Jack and Esther were on one, Henri and I on another. We stayed in England. We left Belgium, Brussels. Went to England. Was in a holding tank there until we were told a ship was acquired. My ship was at the Aquitania. It was a military ship, had survivors on it. Canada only accepted in 1947 1,123 Jewish children. They had to be under the age of 15. The second group was under the age of 18. 40 survivors came to Vancouver. But we arrived, of course, at Halifax, which I'm now in the museum there.
Mm-hmm.
Very cute. My grandchildren have been there, and they said, "Bobby, you're in the museum, and you're in the records." And I said, "I guess I'm old enough to be in a museum."
I think you're in a lot of places, and your story's in a lot of places. You're so kind to share it. Okay. And how old were you when you landed here? When you came to Canada exactly?
I think it was November that we landed, the end of November, and I got in January the 3rd to Vancouver. But we went from Halifax.
Uh-huh.
The French children were destined to go to Montreal.
Of course.
We went on train in those days. We stopped in Montreal, and our guide, which was taking us, said, "You've got 20 minutes train stopping here at the side, because only we, Canada, would accept us to make that the Jewish Congress had families, Jewish families, to take us in.
Okay.
You couldn't just come in,
Right.
because we were damaged goods up here."
Okay.
And anyway, I walked around, came back on within 15 minutes, walked back on the train, and I said to the lady, "They don't speak French here. They speak like in Vache Espagnol, which is a Spanish cow. And I'm sorry, Montreal French, you still speak that way to me. French is French." But they're nice people, of course. I didn't stay in Montreal. We went all back. Some stayed in Montreal. So as the groups were dispersed. And then we were left in Calgary. That was a dumping ground for the Jewish children. Because at that time, in 1947, there were 35,000 Jews in Winnipeg. That was the largest, not Toronto, not Montreal.
So that's why we have such a large Jewish population in a small city like Winnipeg.
Come west.
Okay.
And then went east.
Oh.
7 feet of snow, like I wrote in my book, and I said, "I'm going to die here. I can't stay here." And it set us with a lovely family in Winnipeg. My sister and I were, for the first time in our lives, lived together. For the few weeks we were there. She wanted to stay. I said, "No, I will die. The snow is too deep. It's too cold." And so after 2 weeks in Winnipeg, I think it was, or maybe longer, time means nothing, I went to the Jewish Congress and I said, "I have to get out." My brother always says, "If our dad goes, we're all going. We are not being separated anymore."
Mm.
And so, because he was older, we had to listen.
So you took everyone to
We were
Vancouver.
brought up. As the youngest child, I was spoiled for the first 4 years of my life, as far as they tell me. And I can remember the memories of my family going to Plage, the beach. And so when at the application in Brussels, I wrote, they said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Place by the ocean." I can know about Vancouver. That's what I wrote. And all this traveling. And then I got back on the train, stopped in Calgary, flatline, one little red building, 1947. I look at her and I said, "I can't live in a small town. I'm a big city girl. I can't hide in a small town. Everybody will know me. They'll know what I'm doing. So I have to hide." Because that was my concern. I had to hide. And the lady says, the next place is called Vancouver. She spoke French, of course, and Yiddish. And we landed at the foot of Granville Street. And again, a miracle. My foster father, there was only 7 of us, at the foot of Granville, the train station. My foster father came to the train station. He was the founder of the Beth Israel Synagogue. And he said to the lady, I want that little girl. My foster family they were married for 30 years, had no children, knew nothing about children. But he wanted, and I'm grateful because miracle for that. My brother Jack and I, of the 40 children that came to Canada, became these families' children. And we buried them, we took care of them in their old age.
So did all 4 of you ended up going to the
different families?
Oh, different families in the same city.
There was no family that will take 4.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But but it was all in the same. It was all in Vancouver.
But the thing that we were robbed of, I was asked this the other day, how close was I to my brother and sister? We were only sisters and brothers by blood. We didn't know each other. In Vancouver, yes, we all made our lives. Okay. We all grew, but in different sections of Vancouver. My older brother older than me, and my sister too.
Yeah.
And she got married 3 years before me, so we really didn't have time because the child we were the youngest, Jack and I, so we were like the adopted sister and brothers to the child survivor groups.
Right. You were
the older one became a community unto themselves. They had no grandparents. They had no parents. They had no sisters or brothers. So they married each other. Most of them, I didn't. I married a Canadian, so did my brother. But they married each other. So they became a community to themselves. They helped each other.
Okay.
Jack and I became Canadian right away. Yeah, that's what they said to us.
Right.
To this day, even till I'm at my age, when the old survivors that are still alive and are still out, they pinch my cheek like they did when I was a kid. And I said, I'm a bubby. I'm a great bubby, great grandmother. I said, don't pinch my cheek anymore. And I also became the translator when they first came after us, because I spoke so many languages. So right. I was used to tell them the life here and what they could do and how they can get jobs. But I was only 12 years old, then 13, 14, 15.
Well, meanwhile, you came to Vancouver, and so did another 40 of the child survivors. And I know we have our group of survivors, our camp survivors and different survivors that came and built very difficult, but in the long run, very successful lives.
Absolutely. Plus, they're mostly, a lot of them are the founders of the Simon Fraser University. They
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
1965. Well, Simon Fraser University was built and chaired by the Jewish community.
Okay, I didn't know that. Well, maybe you can share with me a little bit about more of you as a young adult in Vancouver. As I've heard so many stories, it always amazes me how these people could come from World War II, come from the cities in hiding for 5 years like you were, come from a camp, and just start working, start building a life. And over the years, I know they took on jobs that weren't very popular back then, but some of those jobs ended up being very lucrative down the road. Picking up scrap in the alleyway wasn't very popular, but all of a sudden they became scrappers and did quite well over the years. Tell me a little about your story, because I know a little bit about your story and I know how successful you've been. So maybe start as a young adult and tell me how you got started, how you started working and married and became so successful as you are today.
Thank you. Because let's go this way.
Okay.
Successful, all the child survivors that came here we were told, we were worried that we would live off the government. Not one of us lived off the government. We all found jobs, or we created our own business or our own jobs. As a 12-year-old, the Jewish Congress opened a classroom for those 7 of us, because in those days, we didn't have ESL. English second language only came later when other immigrants came to this country.
You spoke many languages, but English wasn't one of them.
I learned Hebrew in 6 weeks. And it was Rabbi and Dina Kogan. There was a rabbi of Bethesda at that time. I also was I sang in the choir and on radios and school programs on the radio. Some Hebrew and music was my kind of background. I worked in multitudes of jobs. I have encountered anti-Semitism in the jobs. Eaton's store wouldn't hire Jewish people, yet I opened the Eaton's Good Deed Club radio show, but they didn't know I was Jewish. They thought I was Marie, French. But in those days, on the application in Canada, they ask you, it's, thank God it's not used today. And I hope not. I haven't looked for a job. I've been a boss, and on my application, there is no.
No, they're not allowed to do that anymore.
I don't think it's the law. I think it's the law that you can't do that.
Right.
So we had to find our ways in the school. I lasted, they spoke only Yiddish in the class. I was a child that was alone, that I know I had to learn another language and get rid of my French accent and all the other accents, which I did very well. And unless I speak French before I do public speaking, then I have a slight accent. I can hear it in French. You still has a slight one. I knew that if I was learning English in that class, because Yiddish was the common language for all of us to speak, no matter how many other languages we spoke, which all survivors spoke more than one language. Yes, in Europe, we were so connected to other countries that we spoke more than was called.
Right.
If you didn't speak 5-7 languages, you were pretty stupid.
Wow.
I spoke 7 languages. I came here, but I was called stupid. I decided to leave. I came home. My foster parents, Russian, and my Russian was not good. I had a street, they were off, and so we didn't communicate for almost three months. It takes me 3 months to learn language, and for me. And I don't know about anybody else, but that's for me. Excuse me. And so I drew a picture of a schoolhouse for my dad, my foster father, and he understood, thank God, for a man that didn't have children, nor a woman. This was very difficult. I ran away the first year 12 times.
Wow.
Away from them because I just felt suffocated from them. They didn't do anything. It's just that it was an hour to eat dinner. What do you mean? I ate dinner when I got food, or breakfast or whatever. So it was to relearn to eat. I ate with a fork and knife. They wanted me to only eat with a fork. And it was starting to have rules that didn't fit in my life as far as I'm concerned. So I ran away. He always, of course, found me and he had said, "You're mine. You're going to be mine. You're going to stay with me. You are my family." And of course, we became family. Thank God. They were great people. Because of them, they took me back to my Jewishness that I didn't know I was Jewish. And I went to the synagogue, and thus I went to the choir because I didn't know I was humming the music one Friday night. And my dad looked at me and he said to me, "Versteh? You understand?" And I said, and so I went to the choir. I was 13 years old. I sang in the choir for 27 years there. Decided it was time to leave. Decided I wanted to go to public school. That's the school. So at the age of 12, I went to grade 1, Maple Grove. Carrisdale kid. I went to Maple Grove. I was like any student that has a teacher that sticks and changes your life. And her name was Miss Mowat. And when I wrote my book, a dozen of my friends said, "Miss Mowat was my teacher. She changed my life." Miss Mowat is the one that said, "Change your name to Marie." She found a little French dictionary and used a magnifying glass. And the dictionary was about this big. And she used that to speak to me. I did grade 1 to grade 6 in 10 months. I went to Point Grey. I went to McGee. I went to UBC. They didn't know where to put me in which grade, in which class. So I was in different classes throughout the day. I rode a bike that my dad bought me, because in those days, not everybody had a car. Yeah, but I can drive. I wasn't allowed to drive till I was 21 years old. I was already married 3 years. I didn't become a citizen till I was 21. That was the law in those days. I had a lot of laws and rules in the first 7.5 years of my life in this country.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 19.
Wow. And how did you find
I
your
was
husband?
married for 52 years. It's been 18 years since my husband passed away on October, this past October.
His memory be a blessing.
Yeah, and I think. I never had to fight for a job or anything. It always fell into my lap. I've been a dental nurse. I've been a secretary. I worked for an insurance company. I was the first woman insurance underwriter because I felt if I do all the placing of your insurance, I might as well get the money for it. I wasn't given the job when they found out I was the woman that passed. But I was hired to teach the two other men that passed the test. And I got 180 a month and they got 275.
So it was inequitable back then too,
It
women
was
versus men.
as well. My husband and I became builders. He was a furrier. I got married in 1955, January the 9th. We had 3 daughters. I have 2 now. My youngest daughter died 15 years ago of cancer. I have 7 grandchildren. I am expecting my 7th grandchild in April. Please
Also
God.
tough.
In the school system, I was abused. I was put downstairs. I was made fun of. So I understand the abuse that goes on in the school. I speak about that and how I stood up to it. The school plays and sports were to pick me through the schools. I always had the lead in school plays because I had a voice. I didn't know. On jobs, I walked into your office and I said, you need me in this office. And they would hire me. I had the background. I had shorthand, typing. And I always tried to get a job a little bit more because my husband was a furrier and just starting out here at Vancouver. But I happened to be allergic to furs. And so after 3 years, and I said I would, when we got married, I said we would have a baby on our 4th anniversary. She was born October 4th, just before our January the 9th would have been our 4th anniversary. We built our first duplex, the first home. In 52 years of marriage, we only built 4 homes, but we built Vancouver and apartment blocks. I became a draftsman without a piece of paper.
Tell me a little bit about that. How did you guys become builders of apartment complexes?
My friend Morris Cohen and my best friend Jean, they both passed away. He was a builder in Burnaby. And I had saved money for my singing, our jobs, and we found a lot of 5 Jewish families, and one of them was our partner. We built in Island on number 5 road.
Wow.
And the first drugstore, the first 4 houses on Dairy Island. Fraser Bridge was the only way to get into Richmond at the time. And Morris, as a builder, I called him and I said, I'd like you to build a house. And he says, no, Elliot, you're going to build. I said, what do I know about building? He said, you and Cindy will build. He says, you tell Sidney to write down what he wants in his house, and then you write down so you don't fight, and we'll decide. There was only one
Good
room.
advice.
He was very wise. And it was only one room different than what we both wanted in this house. And my husband, he was a great businessman, said, really amazing young man. And he said, let's build a building, a duplex, so that the other side will pay our mortgage. I had saved $2,500, and that's when I bought the lot. 125-foot lot by 78 for a duplex lot.
Wow.
Off number 5 in Canada. And so we and then we started to build homes in Lulu Island, and then in Ladner we did subdivisions, and then we built in Marple, and then we built then we built all over Vancouver, and became builders.
How many homes do you think you built?
I'd rather.
Okay, fair enough.
We did. For a couple, Sid was a poor boy. My dad could understand. He said, "You're going with so many different boys. How come?" I said, "I see something that I guess that nobody else sees." And
That's right.
And I remember when I was walking down the aisle with him in the synagogue, he said, "If you change your mind, you can walk out now." I said,
I heard from a little birdie that you were quite the businesswoman too.
we were lucky. My husband and I, we were first friends, partners, and husband and wife in that order.
I think probably luck played a little bit of a role in it, but I think a lot of hard work and just pushing. When I moved to Canada, much later than you did, I didn't immigrate here until 89. I tell people I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. But if I didn't take advantage of buying the businesses I bought, I never would have done it. So I think luck has to do with just having the confidence to make the right decisions. And then hopefully you do. And it's so nice that you and your husband were able to build that together. It just amazes me to see how people, especially, I'm telling you, the people who came from World War II back in 45, 46, 47, 48, the way that they were able to start and have nothing. Like you said, the way that people looked down at the Jewish people who moved here, it was pretty horrific. Was that everybody, or was that just a group of people, or what was that like? Did you make friends that weren't Jewish when you moved here? Was there people who accepted you?
I was friends. I was very lucky in the schools, because I was told never to make friends as I moved. And like the rabbi said to me one day, years ago, "You are friends with everybody, but even I have worked with you for 30 years and I still don't know you." I didn't talk about it. We survivors did action. We didn't speak, because we were told when we came here, forget the past, live for the future.
Mm.
And so even when I tried to tell my husband about my past, the bad things, he just said, forget it. So we became dormant. I became a child of silence the same way as I did when I left home. I became a robot. I didn't cry. I didn't cry until Sydney passed away.
Wow.
And I still can't let myself, and I buried my mother-in-law a couple of years later, and then my daughter. And then just June the 8th, I lost my sister Esther. She would have been 93 next month. I just see my life with death. It's always been, and resilience is what we're constantly being told, that we have resilience. I'm asked, how did you survive? I have to answer as a robot.
Me knowing you the way I do, I can appreciate what you're saying, but I think it has so much more to do with your attitude, and you're always smiling, you're always happy, and it doesn't seem like a robotic thing. It seems like it's who you are inside. Well, I have a very good friend named Ed Lewin, and he told me that before the war, there was many Jews who had great families, they were together, they were positive, and they came out of the war, if they were lucky enough to live, to be positive and strong. And there were some people who didn't have such great families, and they didn't have such a great attitude, and they came out of the war not having such a great attitude. I think it has something, tell me if I'm wrong, because I don't know, but it just seems like maybe it has something to do with the way you were raised before the war and how you came out of the war.
You are right, but it was a technique of hiding. As I said, I created who you're seeing here today. I am Mariette speaking, but once I finish with you, I become Marie, as everybody knows, the smiling, hugging, loving,
Yes,
go lucky, because there's a motto, I think, that says, if you laugh, the world laughs with you. Cry, nobody cries with you.
Ah, right.
And by hiding who I was and creating the person you wanted to fit in this community.
And how do you like the person that you've become then?
That's right.
How do you feel about being Marie? How do you feel
I
about...
am comfortable with both. When I'm finished speaking as Mariette, Mariette goes on a shelf. Because I tried to get Mariette to grow my age, to become age. It cannot be. Mariette will always be the child that's in me.
7-year-old.
The child that survived. The child the resilience, the strength. Like when I have very sad times, I pull Marie Doduck, not Marie.
Okay.
I need Marie's
Interesting.
strength.
Okay.
Like I have said when I've spoken to kids in prison, street kids, I'm a street kid. As Mariette, I can hurt
Well, I'm glad I know Marie the most. I don't want to keep you here too long. The last thing I'd really like to mention, and I know it's not going to be easy for you, but I'm going to ask you for a favor, and that is to not worry about bragging a little bit. About some of the things you've accomplished. I know you've been given some awards. I know that you've written a book. I know that people are starting to recognize so much of what you've done in your life. And I know you don't like to talk about it, but I think it's only fair for our listeners to know a little bit about the way people have at least recognized you, recognize what you've given back to our city, to Canada, and to our community, because I think it's very important. I think that's one of the reasons people receive these awards, is to make sure that you know that the community is so much better off because you were here. And I'm just wondering if you could share that, maybe a little bit about the award that you won and a little bit about some of the things that you've been given.
As I said, I didn't talk about things. So the community, I'm involved in all boards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't discuss from one board to the other at meetings what I've spoken to the boards. I keep very good secrets. I have worked for the betterment of children all my life. It's been really for children because I didn't have any rights.
Mm-hmm.
So all the years. So partly that's why one of the reasons the Holocaust Educational Center that we opened, Dr. Rob Cribb, Robbie Weisman, Leon Kahn, David Shafran, were the ones that started. And we, the Jews, built the Holocaust Education Center. As I said at the onset of this talk, that mission is what we feel the world needs and people need so they can learn tolerance. So that when they open their stupid mouths, they don't come out with stupid things coming out because they have no background. And so getting awards, I'm uncomfortable with the highlight.
I know you are.
I am very uncomfortable. Everybody knows this.
Mm-hmm.
Being recognized, I have been recognized by the different groups, like the Child's Foundation. I can name more than a dozen, but it's not that I want to mention. It's just that you ask the question. But I am uncomfortable with the limelight. I am nervous speaking about it right now. I feel very cold. And I'm not a cold person, but I feel very cold because you asked me. To do things, you should want or expect rewards. When we child survivors talk and open our hearts, bleed inside, we don't go out for limelight. We go out to teach what is happening.
That's right.
Trying to open your eyes, your ears. Don't be complacent. The word is. We are fighting constantly. We thought that our country here, Canada, we live. I can only speak about Canada. I'm not talking to my family in Europe because they're they want to come here. I said, it's not safe anymore. The work one does should be not for your name. Should be for the betterment of humanity, of the people. Your government, I'm asking the government all the time. All of us, we're fighting, asking you. Why are you not like the women's group that I belong to, the world's women? On October 7th, they were so silent.
Yes.
So when they wrote me 4 months later about some kind of stuff, I wrote them back and I said, take my name off this list. Are we Jewish women not women? I thought we were all a group of the world women fighting for our women's rights. You were so silent, so deafening. Silent. That's what we're fighting about. The awards, the recognition is really, like I said when I received it, I'm receiving it next Friday as a
What are you receiving next Friday?
Right here in Vancouver. The Governor General is coming to Vancouver.
That's right.
So I do not have to go, and I thought I wasn't receiving it till the end of 25. That's what I was told. I knew nothing about it. It was my friends in Toronto, apparently, that did it in 2020. Wow. I just found out. Of course, my daughter, both my daughters, and my daughter Kathy did all the research, and she said she just called a few people, but 12 people called and said, "Go write a letter for me too." I was asked, how come I didn't receive it years ago? I said, I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't even looking for it. It's nice to be recognized, but I'm asking the government, instead of recognizing me, recognize what's going on.
The women.
Politically. Yes. Recognize what's happening in our city. Stand up for what is right, not for next election.
Mm-hmm. I understand. It's tough. I often think that recognition is important, not just for the person who's receiving it, but for other people to see what's happening. Because if people see you get recognized and they see what you've done, it may give them the impetus to do more. Not because they want to be recognized, but because they know it's capable. A lot of people don't know what they're capable of unless they have seen somebody else have done it. And Marie, when we look at your life and we see what you've accomplished, it lets it lets other people know what they're capable of.
But I'd like to say one thing. I did tell them I'm accepting this for all immigrants and all survivors.
That's beautiful.
That have come to our country.
That's beautiful.
Because I'm standing up, they're standing with me to receive this.
That's
because
beautiful,
we are
Marie.
I'm not the only one that has built this country. I just happen to be, oh, by the way, 3 child survivors in our group of 35 years have received the Order of Merit.
That's great.
Which is, and that's an unbelievable thing.
It really
that 3 survived on 3 different categories.
Wow.
Which is
beautiful.
A very nice thing. That means we have come across the line.
Yes. Well, you've accomplished so much. It's just amazing. It's amazing what the Jewish population that came out of World War II accomplished. It'll never stop amazing me. The beautiful thing is when you accept it on behalf of all these survivors, most of the survivors are not around anymore to be able to accept it.
I just want to mention I've got 32 survivors in the Louis Brier home, the senior home in Vancouver, the only
32.
one on the West Coast. We have 32 survivors in our home that we're looking after.
Wow. I know the home is very close to our family.
Yeah, of course. And I'm on the foundation.
Yeah. How many survivors are left in Vancouver?
I don't really know. I should ask that. But I know there's most of the ones at the Louis Brier are from camps, not just the child survivors.
All right.
And our group, we've got 25 in the one that we meet twice a month. And we're one of the only lodges anywhere in the world that is still going strong.
That's amazing. That is really great.
That we created here in Vancouver.
Yeah.
I'm asking your audience to come to the Holocaust Educational Center on 41st at the Jewish Community Center. We have a museum. You're welcome to come and see our exhibit right now.
Yeah, it's really an amazing museum. And I suggest to anybody who lives in Vancouver, who comes through Vancouver, go to the Holocaust Museum. It's really a great museum put together and curated by some amazing people. And there's always someone there to answer questions. There'll be a lot of people listening to this podcast that are born in different parts of the world that don't even teach about the Holocaust in their high schools. It's not because they don't care. It's just because it's not part of their realm. And I've taught people here at University Canada West who don't know a lot, but they're very interested when they find out. So I very much suggest and offer everyone to go to the Holocaust Museum here in Vancouver. It's underneath the Jewish Community Center. So last thing, tell me your book, where people can get it, and a little bit about just something about it, why people should buy that book.
Well, as I said, I gave it away to the Azrieli Foundation. It went into reprint the first day with first printing. It's coming out in French next month in February. Oh, it's already, next month.
Next month, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It's coming out in French, and my own voice audio is coming out, I think, in the spring.
Oh, you did an audio book,
yes,
and you did it with your
voice. An
voice.
book as well. And
is it on Audibles?
The name of the book is A Childhood Unspoken. And instead of, say, Child of Silence, which is what I was, I found a voice. That's really what it is. My book is The Way I Speak, that you heard me today. It's the way you read it. It's on Amazon CA in Canada and Amazon COM in the United States.
Okay.
There is some books, I think, at the Holocaust Center to get.
So this is something that you've donated, and
Donated. It's gone free to every school. It's used as an education
is great.
across the country. I've
Mhm.
traveled across Canada, and it's been used and sent by the Israeli. Every student gets a free copy before I come and speak.
That's
And
great.
I bring, when my professor, historian is free, she comes with me to speak in schools. I spoke to 36 schools, 3,000 kids last year.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I just spoke to.
What are you turning 40 years old? Is that what it is?
I think I am.
You have that much energy.
I
Yeah,
do.
You
And
really
thank
do.
God I enjoy feeling strong. I'm grateful to God keeping me alive. Most people
amazing.
don't live it a life. But we find that survivors, we have 105 and 160-year-old survivors.
Yes.
And we do not understand how we have survived.
Yeah, because you are survivors. You're exactly that. That's why. Marie, thank you so much for coming and being my very first guest on A Passion of Mine, which is this podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be your guest on this program. I will for sure be listening to it.
Thanks for watching this episode of Coffee Between Two Immigrants. Please be sure to like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.